Me, Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. I have a good topic for you today. This is an important one, especially if you're here or you are even in another country and you are hearing a certain promises from certain individuals, particularly in this case, the employer. Now, this is the human trafficking Awareness Month in January, and tomorrow is also a day, Human Trafficking Awareness Day. So I want to talk to you today about labor trafficking. And one thing that I find happens very often is when an individual is usually here. Hi there, Nadia. Usually here in the United States, and they so desperately to stay here, or to gain some money, or be able to settle here in the United States. They are vulnerable in a sense, and whenever an employer comes along, they take advantage of that vulnerability. And one of the things and this may have been something you've heard already, is they will promise you a work permit. And they will promise you the work permit, but you have to start working for them first. If you get into a situation like this, then likely this is a dangerous situation for yourself. And also, you may be heading down the path of labor trafficking. Labor trafficking comes in different forms. And based on my experience with my clients, I can tell you that this line, "I'll get you the work permit," is a line that I hear very often from employers who are become the traffickers. Is they know that they cannot get you a work permit. They know that they don't intend to get you a work permit. They know that you want to stay here or you want to work here. And so, what they do is they play on your desire to want to stay in the United States, to want to be able to get your work permit, and in some cases, even your permanent residence. They play on that desire and make these kinds of promises that they can't keep. And then they get you into a situation where you're trapped. Because in truth and fact, if you start to work for an employer before you obtain your work permit, then that means that you are sabotaging your permanent residence, or your ability to fix your status here, or the employer's ability to sponsor you, because it's not allowed for you to work without a permit here. And they're very strict in the employment immigration arena, that if you do work without a permit, it usually means a denial of your work visa. It means and sometimes even deportation, and it means a denial of your adjustment of status application in some cases. So I would be very skeptical if an employer comes to you with a very too good to be true offer that says, if you work for me first, I'll go ahead and get your work permit. Um, or I'll even go ahead and get your green card. Usually, that employer, it doesn't mean that every single employer's intention is to traffic, but in many cases where they make this kind of promise, they understand that you're vulnerable. They understand your desire to want to stay here, and they take full advantage of it so that they get your labor, but they know that they're not giving you anything in return for that. Even though you wouldn't have worked if you knew the truth. But so they use that fraud to convince you to work. This can be considered a form of trafficking, especially when you find yourself stuck in this situation, and because of what they're doing, you feel like you can't leave. So, say you're in this position where the employer is continuously promising you an immigration benefit. They're promising to help you to fix your status, to get the work permit, and you don't want to do the work, but because of your this strong desire to be able to do the right thing, to go through the legal immigration process, you continue forward, and they continue to use this promise to keep you working. So you feel like if you leave, you are sabotaging your ability to get your work permit that they promised you, or even your green card that they promised you. So you try to stick it out. Usually, this will end in a nasty surprise. Usually ends in a nasty surprise for my clients, where they then realize that they were strung along for months and months and months, sometimes even over years, to do this work that was you. It's usually hard. It's usually something you wouldn't want to do. It's something that you would have quit a long time ago, but you didn't, because of this promise to get you the work permit. This is a form of trafficking, because when they induced you by fraud to work for them under the promise that you will get the work permit or an immigration benefit, um, they they basically induce you by fraud to do work you would not otherwise do. And then, in addition to that, they continue to use fraud to force you to work unwillingly in this area that you're working in, right? Because it's not voluntary. It's something that you felt like you had to withstand, or you had to um, put up with to get to the benefit that they're promising you. And so if you and when you have situations like this, you also it's typical to also have the employer become abusive, to adopt abusive tendencies, because now they have you in a spot where they feel like they have power over you. So if there's any little thing they see you are hesitant to cooperate. Maybe you don't want to. You mention you're gonna quit or you're gonna leave. They use this this promise, the false promise, to keep you in place. So if you leave, they say, well, if you leave, you're not going to get that work permit. And sometimes I've even heard you're never going to be able to apply for anything again, any immigration benefit. Another thing is, we'll report you to ICE. We'll go ahead and call ICE on you so that they can get you. And then there's also, you will owe them money, because they sometimes they'll even go as far as to say they have already filed your paperwork and now you owe them. If you leave the job, you're going to owe them money, and they're going to report this to ICE so that they know that you walked off on the job while they were applying for your benefit. So when we think about trafficking, we don't think about this type of trafficking, right? In this case, you think you're in this situation. You feel like there's no getting out because there's no relief for you. The last thing you may be thinking is that you have been the victim of trafficking. And I'm here to tell you, under immigration law, and even this is not just under immigration law, this is a form of trafficking. However, under immigration law, for purposes of getting what's called a T status, a form of immigration relief, to be able to stay in the United States, get your work permit, and be able to heal from that ordeal, they do look at situations like this where you do feel forced. It could be physical force, it could be fraud, or it could be coercion. Coercion is what I just mentioned previously, where they take it a notch up. So, in addition to the fraud, keeping you in place to say, hey, if you quit, you're not going to get that work permit I promised you. Remember that work permit I'm applying for? They'll also do things like use coercive tactics. And those coercive tactics could be, once again, more like threats. So it's a threat of some type of harm, not even necessarily physical harm. It could be something to the effect of, if you leave, you're going to owe us a lot of money. And if you owe us a lot of money, we can take you to the court. We can call the police on you to arrest you. It does not mean that they necessarily are going to threaten physical violence, but it's also involves an abuse of the legal system. All of this is abuse. The fraud and the coercion can be considered abuse of the legal system, where they're offering, telling you they're applying for your work permit or they're applying for your green card, or that they you will owe, they'll go to the court or they'll go to the police if you owe money and you leave the job. So trafficking does not only involve being tied up somewhere or being kidnapped. I know that that certainly counts. That does happen, but it comes in different forms. Not only physically being forced to do acts against your will, but also subtle behaviors on the part of the trafficker to get you to do things that they want you to do for their benefit, also counts here. And so I want to educate you about this because it is so prevalent. I have had seen situations where people are being recruited from other countries. So the areas that I see that are common in this human trafficking realm is where they're being recruited. So they either come here on a visitor's visa or they're in their own country and they're being recruited to come to the United States to come work in adult care facilities, where they will take care of elderly individuals. And it's all so new. You are promised honey and bread. It's going to be such a great experience. You're going to make all this money. You're going to be put up in the facility so you won't have to pay rent. You're going to take care of one elderly or disabled patient. And then you find that when you are placed in that situation, you're not paid. And sometimes the employer, the trafficker, will say, well, they're not paying you because you don't have to pay rent and they're giving you food. So they don't pay you, or they find excuses to charge you for certain things, like if things get lost in the facility or something gets broken, or they tell you you have to wear a uniform, or they start to charge you for rent, even though the promise was that you didn't have to pay rent. You will find that this is happening, so you're making little or nothing. Another thing is they tell you you are gonna come here, you're gonna work 7 to 7, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 4 or 5 days a week, and then you will have your days off. And then you come and you find out you don't have days off, that you're being worked into the ground. In addition to doing the caretaking for the patient, you are told that was the only thing you'll be doing. You're sharing a room with someone, an individual. You're also cleaning the house, cooking the food, serving the food, maybe even playing roles like even nurses, where you're cleaning wounds, you're taking you're taking uh, the pressure of the patient and or the disabled individual. So, these are the types of things that happen when you're in a type of labor trafficking situation. They're not all the same. This is just an example, but you'll find one thing common across any trafficking situation, and it's usually that you tend to feel stuck in the situation, but you feel like you can't leave it because you're either being promised something, or you're being threatened about something, or you're feeling fearful because of their behaviors against you, and you feel like they're hinting in their behaviors that if you leave, harm could come to you in some way. Not necessarily physical harm, but other harm, like you may feel like you may be detained, or the police might come after you, or you might be deported. So if you have been through a situation like this, know that there is immigration relief that's available. Um, and you are able to get that relief so I work with my clients and I really represent them through the entire process. And once I determine you qualify, we get started right away to work on your case. The way that we handle your case is going to be dependent on the type of trafficking situation, because I do represent clients who have gone through sex trafficking and who've gone through labor trafficking. I talked about labor trafficking, but there's also the sex trafficking, which sometimes can also be labor plus sex trafficking mixed together. But another one worthy of mentioning here, and I've seen the situation, is where someone feigns love. So maybe you have met a citizen here, or you've met just an individual here who has promised you the world. You feel like you're in love with this person. And then when you start to live with them, it turns into a whole other situation where they're a monster. You may be forced to do acts against your will. You may be forced to clean the home. You may be forced to take care of the children of the trafficker. They may take away your passport, take away your documents so that you're unable to leave. They may also threaten things like if you leave this house, they will either report you or they will put fear in you that somebody's going to come and get you, so you can't leave to go and you can't leave the situation. So I have seen where in this case, where it's an intimate partner turned trafficker, where they are, gun owners, or they threaten violence in other ways. If they can't have you, nobody can. This has happened with multiple of my clients where they are trying to force them to do what they want them to do. And in fear, you are already living with them. You tend to you feel like you have to comply because you're undocumented and you have no way out. I'm telling you now that this is a way out, is that there is immigration relief. Now, here's the relief, right? If you are in a situation where you feel stuck or forced to be in a situation, because if you feel like you get out of that situation, the individual, it could be an employer, it could be an intimate partner, it could be a relative, it could be a stranger, it could be an acquaintance. If they are making you feel like, or they've told you straight up that if you leave the situation, they will retaliate in some way, or they tell you things like, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? You can't ever find a job, or you can't ever survive without me out there. If you're in a situation where you feel forced to be there because of language like this and behaviors against you like this, then you can apply for what's called the T status. With the T status, you are able, upon approval, to get your work permit, your social security number, and a pathway to permanent residence. After 3 of the 4 years, sometimes we can even apply earlier for your adjustment of status to get permanent residence. You are able to move forward with that and get these benefits and then be able to heal. In addition to that, there are also programs available for you to continue to get assistance to help you to settle in the United States. The benefits that you get would be similar to one of an asylum seeker, where once you are approved for T status, you're able to not only get the work permit and get Social Security, but you're also, usually my clients are in a vulnerable situation where they need extra help, sometimes counseling, sometimes they need help with job placement. Sometimes they need help with medical assistance. All of this can also be available once you're approved. So, in that case, you would be able to get, for example, Medicaid, you'd be able to get certain benefits, housing assistance, and it would depend on the state that you're in and the programs available. But there's a case manager that's also assigned to you. When we have approvals, we immediately, sometimes even before the immigration service informs us that we've been approved, we'll get correspondence from the Human Services Department informing us that our client is now eligible for certain benefits, and they can have a case manager assigned to them to be able to help them to navigate this system. So it is a very fulfilling way to come out of a very bad situation, to be able to move forward with your lives. And we work really hard for our clients to make sure that we help them to navigate this. It's complex territory, and but we try our best to help them through the process, to advocate for them, and to make sure we we succeed. That's our goal. All right, so now I'm going to answer questions. So go ahead. I see a number of questions so far, and I see on YouTube as well. Hi there. It's nice to see you. Good afternoon. Please, my wife is a green card holder. We submit documents so we submit documents last year, 03042022. Please, how are they gonna approve my documents? So, it really just depends on what you submitted, and how does the application look? It's when it. I don't know if you submitted an I-130 petition or you submitted an adjustment of status, but when you're here and you're in doubt and you're asking, how are they going to approve it? It really requires me to evaluate what you submitted. Usually, I prefer that your consultations be done before you submit these documents, because sometimes submitting documentation means that the damage can already be done, and that limits my ability to fix a situation. But in this case, if it's an I-130 petition that's pending, you could be looking at anywhere. Okay, so I just saw I-130. So I'm seeing anywhere from 9 months to a year to get the decision on those. Keep in mind that this is just an estimation based on my own experience with my clients. I can always be more or less, but I'm seeing anywhere from 9 months to a year to get a decision on those, on the I-130 petitions. All right, so let's go ahead and answer some questions. I'm excited. I'm seeing so many questions. So let's go. I'm trying to get to just to the top of the questions, and so I can get everybody. Okay. So my girlfriend's father started filing for her and her family. They had a disagreement and she can't get any information from him. She was sent a letter to say that the filing was approved. What should she do? She should schedule a consultation to determine whether she can do something on her own. If she's under the age of 25, she may have the ability to apply on her own, but it also depends on where she is. Is she in the United States? And then what is your girlfriend's father's status in the United States? Is he a military member, or does he work for the federal government? Because if that's the case, then he can also, she may be able to file from outside of the United States. So, it's going to depend on what her answers to my follow-up questions would be. So go ahead and just schedule the consultation. Let your friend know. You can always share my information, share a video, share a link on my site, and let her know she can schedule a consultation to see if she has the option to schedule on her own. All right, keep putting those questions in the comments. I'm scrolling through to get to your questions. Um, Hi there, good day. If I file for VAWA but didn't submit any bills, lease, etc. to show cohabitation, will that implicate my case since my husband died, or all that from me? Is there ways a lawyer can work around that? So you must show that your marriage was bona fide. To be able to show that your marriage is bona fide, you have to um, you have to go ahead and show different kinds of evidence depending on what your marriage was like. Every marriage is different. Can an attorney then turn around and X off a requirement that you show the bona fides of your marriage? No, we cannot do that. However, what we can do is we can use our legal expertise to determine how the abuse or the mistreatment involved um, affected your ability to show proof. And this can be done through other types of evidence. For example, if you are doing counseling or there's a psychologist involved, the psychologist can very well explain the power dynamic in the relationship and why you may not have had the power to have access to the lease or any of the bills. Um, but yes, this is usually when you miss this requirement, where you show the requirement that you have lived together. You'll either get a request for evidence, or you have to show that you're exempt in some way. For example, if the spouse, if you are outside of the United States, for example, and the spouse was in the military or was the employee of the federal government, that may help you in regards to the cohabitation aspect of this. But you still have to show that your marriage was real. Um, Hello. All letter will come to my address from USCIS or to the attorney. It depends on the case type. Now, with T status, U victims of crime, VAWA, uh, these usually go to the attorney's address because the USCIS is very much aware of the dangers involved in sending it to your address that you may be sharing with the trafficker or the abusive spouse or relative who's mistreating you. And so in those cases, it's usually the attorney, and my clients and I are usually happy with that because it adds an extra safeguard to your situation, and to make sure that we can make sure that your case does stay confidential. However, if it's other types of cases, it may be employment based, it may be marriage based, it may be where the relative, the US citizen or legal permanent resident, is petitioning for their own relative. I as the attorney get copies of what my clients get. If a U.S. citizen petitioned for his spouse abroad but owes on taxes and is making monthly payments to pay off, and then I don't see the rest. So that usually is not a problem as long as they're complying with the tax laws and they are filing the filing the taxes per year. Can someone with a C1D visa who overstayed adjust their status after they marry a citizen get legal advice? Usually, most cases, this is going to be a big problem. If this is the crewman's visa, which it sure looks like it, you will not be able to adjust status even if you are married to a U.S. citizen. They're very clear on this, and so you have to make sure that you get a consultation. Now, one thing I want you to know is that this is general information here in the show. It's not personalized legal advice. So generally, when you come and you overstay on a crewman's visa is where you get a visa. You may work on the ship, or you may work as a crew person on an airline. So, if you're working on a plane as a pilot or any other type of staff member, and you're coming into the United States for purposes of that type of employment, then you likely have the crewman's type of visa, and that is very strict on your ability to adjust. You do not have the ability to adjust status, so you have to be careful with it. If a U.S. citizen petition for a spouse abroad but owes, so I did answer that, can it affect the filing process although he's making monthly payments? So usually that's not a problem. What if you're a victim of domestic violence assault while pending asylum? Schedule an appointment and we can talk about this. This may be make you eligible to apply for also the U status or U visa, but we'll have to evaluate what happened if you're the victim of domestic violence. Was it reported? What was what was the context of the assault? Was it in a it's domestic violence, but who committed the violence against you? How long was that going on for? Because you may be eligible for other types of immigration relief. He is a citizen. She is in the U.S. Okay, great, awesome. I look forward to hearing from her. Okay, what is a coin? I don't know what a coin is. So I'm not sure what that. I don't know if something was typed out incorrectly, but at this time it's not ringing a bell. Um, okay, maybe I wrote my question wrong. Wanted to know if my lawyer can help them understand why I wasn't placed on any of those. But thanks. Okay, so good, you understand. Uh, the person who filed my case filed I-130, but I'm in the country. So schedule a consultation. My advice is going to be based on a number of other factors since you're already in the country. So schedule that consultation. You can do that right now. Staff is available to help you from 9:30 to 6:30, 9:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. The scheduling coordinators will be able to help you to schedule it, and you can also schedule your own appointment to talk about your situation and to get specific legal advice and see if there's something we can do to help you. Go to the link in the profile of this page and you'll be able to schedule your own appointment and get started. So, can someone who overstayed on a C1D adjust their status? So, I did answer that. Generally, no. Um, Will USCIS penalize you if you don't file joint taxes? Not necessarily, but what other evidence do you have? What's the processing time to wait for the green card? It's going to depend on how you're applying for that green card. All right, so I don't see any more questions here. So I'm going to head out. Thank you for all your questions on YouTube and Instagram. It's always a pleasure. So go ahead. If you have specific questions about your particular situation, go ahead and call, schedule an appointment. Today I do different topics, but today I talked about I talked about being the victim of trafficking, and a form of trafficking that people don't know is a form of trafficking. So if you're here, you're listening, and this is happening to you or happened to you, know that there is relief, and it doesn't matter how long ago this happened to you. If it happened to you 20 years ago, where an employer promised you something, they may have promised you a work permit, but they placed conditions on it, like you have to come work for them first, and then it turns into a situation where you feel stuck, but you feel forced to continue forward because of this promise that turns out to be false. There is immigration relief for this, and we can talk to you about the facts involved, do a detailed evaluation, and then determine whether you qualify and help you to get that relief. So join me tomorrow with your questions. I will be back tomorrow. So thanks again, everyone. I appreciate your time. Have a good one. Bye bye.